Hello, welcome to Explaining Mathematics. Today's class, fractions. The topic to this class, we will learn how to add and subtract fractions. Prerequisite to this class: Introduction to fraction and decimal, factor, expressing fractions in lowest terms, improper fraction and mixed fractions. You will find these in our channel's playlist under fraction and decimal. To add fractions having a common denominator, simply keep the denominator and add the numerators only. Remember to reduce to lowest terms if necessary. Here we have two fractions, 3/4 plus 2/4, or 3/4 plus 2/4. Since both our fractions have common denominator, we will simply just add the numerators together and keep the denominators unchanged. To subtract fractions having a common denominator, we simply keep the denominators unchanged and only subtract the numerators. Remember to reduce to lowest terms if necessary. Here we've got two fractions, 5/7 and 2/7. 5/7 minus 2/7. We simply keep the denominators unchanged and subtract the numerators only. To add and subtract fractions having a common denominator, simply we keep the denominators unchanged, only subtract and add the numerators. Remember to reduce to lowest terms if necessary. Here we've got 9/20 plus 3/20 minus 7/20. Remember, we simply keep the denominators unchanged and we only add and subtract the numerators. 5/20. This can be reduced to its lowest term. Into the numerator 5, it goes into 5 exactly one time. Into the denominator 5, it goes into 20 exactly 4 times. We will now add and subtract fractions with different denominators. To add fractions with different denominators, first we find a lowest common denominator. We will find lowest common denominator. The first fraction, our denominator, it's 4, and our second fraction, our denominator, is 6. To find lowest common denominator, we will first multiply each denominator by 1, then by 2, then by 3, then by 4, and so on, until we have a common number. Here we found a common number, our denominators have a common number 12. For the first fraction to get a common number on the denominator, we multiply by 3. Our second fraction, to get the common number 12, our denominator, we multiplied by 2. We will now change each fraction to fraction with the common denominator. To do that, we simply, for the first fraction, multiply top and bottom by 3. Similarly, with the second fraction, we multiply top and bottom by 2. We now simply keep the denominators and add the numerators only. Remember to reduce to lowest term if necessary. To add fractions having different denominators, first we find a lowest common denominator. Our first fraction and our second fraction and our third fraction, we take the 3 denominators. We first multiply each denominator by 1, then by 2, then by 3, and so on until we find a common number. Here we've got a common number 30. So to find a common number 30 for our first fraction, we multiply the denominator by 6. To find a common number of our second fraction, we multiply the denominator by 10. To find a common number 30 for our third fraction, we multiply our denominator by 5. We will now change each fraction with the common denominator. To do that, we first multiply top and bottom of our first fraction by 6. Then we will multiply top and bottom of our second fraction by 10. And our third fraction, we will multiply top and bottom by 5. Since our fractions now have common denominator, we simply keep the denominators unchanged and add the numerators only. Remember to reduce to lowest terms if necessary. Into the numerator 3, it goes into 27 exactly 9 times. Into the denominator 3, it goes into 30 exactly 10 times. To subtract fractions having different denominators, first find a lowest common denominator. Here we first find lowest common denominator of both our fractions. First fraction, the denominator, it's 12, and the second fraction, the denominator, is 18. We will now proceed by first multiplying each fraction, the denominator, first by 1, then by 2, and so on until we find a common number. Here we found our common number to be 36. To get a common number for our first fraction, we multiply the denominator by 3. To get a common number of the second fraction, we multiply the denominator by 2. Changing now each fraction with the common denominator. To do that, we will first multiply the first fraction top and bottom by 3. Similarly, we will multiply top and bottom of our second fraction by 2. Now both our fractions have common denominator. We now simply keep our denominators unchanged and subtract numerators only. Remember to reduce to lowest terms if necessary. To subtract fractions having different denominators, first find lowest common denominators. Our 3 fractions have 3 different denominators, 4, 20, and 10. To find a lowest common denominator for all 3 denominators, we first multiply by 1, then by 2, then by 3, and so on for each denominator until we find a lowest common number. Here we found a lowest common number, which is 20. To get 20 on our first fraction, we multiply the denominator by 5. To get 20 on our second fraction, we multiply the denominator by 1. To get 20 on our third fraction, we multiply the denominator by 2. Now, each fraction, we write it with fraction with the common denominator. To do that, our first fraction, we multiply top and bottom by 5. Our second fraction, we multiply top and bottom by 1. Our third fraction, we multiply top and bottom by 2. Now our fractions have common denominator. We can now simply keep the denominators unchanged and subtract numerators only. We will now learn how to add and subtract mixed numbers. To add mixed numbers, there are 2 methods. First method, following example, we have 1 2/3 plus 2 3/4. First, we group the whole and group the fractions. The whole are 1 and 2, and the fractions are 2/3 and 3/4. We now add the whole together and add the fractions together. To do that, we need to find a common denominators for our fractions since they have no common denominator. Then we simply add the whole together. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2/3 plus 3/4. Now they have common denominators. We can simply add them up together. We get the answer to be 3 plus 17/12. Now, finally, we need to add 3 plus 17/12. We first write our whole number 3 as its fraction representation, and remember, any whole number can be written as a fraction by simply just writing a 1 under the whole number. This is a fraction representation of 3. We now add our 3 to 17/12. To do this, we simply again just find the common denominators because now our denominators are different. The first fraction the denominator is 1, and the second fraction, the denominator is 2. Let's find a common number denominators. Now, our fractions have a common number denominator 12. Now we simply keep the denominators and add the numerators only. Finally, we need to change the improper fraction to a mixed number. Remember, improper fraction is a fraction that has a numerator that is greater than denominator. Having said that, it's a correct answer, but it looks nicer when we write it to its mixed number representation. Either way, it's correct. And that is our final answer. We will now do method 2 of how to add mixed numbers. To change mixed fraction to improper fraction, we do that first before we perform the addition. Now our fractions are changed from mixed fraction to improper fraction. We now simply just add our fractions. And to do that, we first must find the lowest common denominators. Now our fractions have a lowest common denominator. We simply just perform the addition as previous classes and examples. Finally, we got an answer that it's an improper fraction. Remember, we can leave it as it is, but it looks nicer and neater to change from improper fraction to mixed fraction. And this is our last answer. To subtract mixed numbers, we group whole number and the fractional numbers separately. Our whole numbers are 2 and 1. Our fractions are 5, 6, and 3/4. We will now subtract the whole numbers and also subtract the fractional numbers. To do that, we make sure our fraction numbers have common denominators. Our whole numbers, 2 minus 1 equals to 1. Our fraction numbers, 10/12 minus 9/12 equal to 1/12. Now, that is not quite the answer. We need to go one step further. We need to add the whole number 1 to fraction 1/12. To do that, we must write the whole number as a fraction. To write any whole number as a fraction, we simply write 1 under it. Now our whole number is converted or written to its fractional representation. Now we can simply treat these two numbers as a fraction and add them together. But first, we must find their common denominators. Now both of our fractions have a common denominator. We can simply add the numerators together and keep the denominators unchanged. Now our answer is in improper fraction. This is okay, but it looks neater and nicer if we write it to its mixed numbers. And that's the final answer. We will now take a look at method 2 on how to subtract mixed numbers. We will first change the mixed fraction to improper fraction. Now our fractions are written to its improper fraction representation. Now, simply we need to find lowest common denominator for both fractions before we start subtracting. Now both our fractions have common denominator. Our answer needs to be changed from improper fraction to mixed number. Remember, improper fraction, it's a correct number, but it looks nicer and neater if we change it to its mixed number. And that is our last answer. End of this class. Please proceed to next topic or class in our channel's playlist. Thank you for watching. If you find this class helpful, please share it with your friends. And don't forget to like and subscribe. A cool comment will be kindly appreciated. Bye for now.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.